of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gracious Heavenly Father, creator of everything and author of truth, Father, we come to you at this time and ask that you be with each and every person that might be affected by the virus, whether it be through jobs or family relationships or their health and even death. And Father, we know you are present and we need to call upon you to help us through this time. However, Father, we also remember there's other things going on in this world, in this state, in this community, and we ask that you be with each and every person and each and everything that's happening. Father, we particularly ask that you be with us this morning as we go about the county's business on behalf of the taxpayers. And Father, we ask that you continue to shower your blessings upon this county and upon this community. Father, we bring all of our prayers to you through your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Well, good morning all. This is Dwayne Grease. I'm the chairman. First of all, my comments, I guess I wish everybody well. You are all doing well, not too much cabin fever. And wish you and your families all the best. See what happens. Consent agenda, fellas.
Move to approve consent agenda, Mr. Clifford.
And this is Lon, and I would second that motion.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion has carried. Public comment in the audience, those who are online listening, and anybody have anything that is not on the agenda out in mystery land, wherever you are. Hearing no comments, didn't give you much of a chance, but you missed it. Full business items. First thing on the list is Robert DeLorme is on with us. I know I heard your name, Robert. We have a proclamation. Would you like me to read that, sir, or do you have any comments beforehand?
I would like to just make a few comments and then have you read the proclamation.
No bet. Go for it.
First of all, I want to thank the commissioners for the opportunity to come before you today on behalf of the Finney County Community Service Center, Finney County Humane Society, the Garden City Police Department, Genesis Family Health, Kansas Children's Service League, Russell Child Development Center, Western Kansas Child Advocacy Center, and the Spirit of Things COP to request your continued support in ending child abuse and neglect in Finney County. Child abuse and neglect is a nationwide problem that is preventable when parents, families, communities, and government work together to advocate for a caring and safe environment for all children. This proclamation will lend a voice to the children that most times go without a voice. These agencies work hard at getting pinwheel gardens around the community to bring awareness. Gardens were planted at the Golden Plains Credit Union, Western State Bank, Bank of the West, Heart and Play, and Price Son's Funeral Home. With the COVID-19 situation going on, it was difficult to go visit all the offices. We did last year to gather large groups for Blue Day on April 3rd. But we all continue to reach out to the public and to gather support to bring awareness to the need for Children Abuse Prevention Month. And so I want to thank you for your time in doing this proclamation and for the children that need it the most. Thank you so much.
I appreciate everything you do, Robert, and all the agencies you mentioned. It's very noble and worthwhile cause. The proclamation. Whereas children are key to the state's future success, prosperity, and quality of life, and while children are our most valuable resource, they're also our most vulnerable. And whereas children have a right to be safe and to be provided an opportunity to thrive, learn, and grow, and whereas child abuse and neglect can be prevented by supporting and strengthening Kansas families, thus preventing the far-reaching effects of maltreatment, providing the opportunity for children to develop healthy, trusting family bonds, and consequently building the foundations of communities. And whereas prevention happens in partnership We must come together as partners so that the voices of our children are heard by all, and we are, as a community, extending a helping hand to children and families in need. And whereas by providing safe, stable, and nurturing relationships for our children, free of violence, abuse, and neglect, we can ensure that Kansas's children will grow up to their full potential as the next generation of leaders, helping to secure the future of this state and nation. Now, therefore, I, Dwayne Grease, Chairman, Finney County, Kansas, do hereby proclaim April 2020 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Finney County, and call upon all citizens, community agencies, religious organizations, medical facilities, and businesses to increase their participation to prevent child abuse, therefore signify the communities, strengthening the communities in which we live. Signed and sealed this 20th day of April 2020. I'm very proud to sign my name to this proclamation. It's well written, and I think it speaks tremendously to our children, as it mentions, citizens of the future. Any comment from our fellow commissioners? We do the audience on signing away. All right. Robert, would you like to, you have another item on the agenda? Would you like to proceed with your presentation?
I would, thank you very much. I submitted a letter to the county commissioners requesting the use of a building at 425 North 8th Street for the month of October. As you well know, with COVID-19, we need to work on figuring out how to raise funds to continue our operations and continue serving children in Finney County and in the Twin Cities Judicial District. So we, Spirit of Plains Casas Fundraising Committee developed a fundraising event that's unique and will be beneficial to our community, will be fun. And so we've developed a haunted house event for October, and we would just have 4 dates, but the ramp up time to get it all together, we would want to have the use of the building the whole month of October. But the dates of the event would be October 23rd, 24th, 29th, and 30th for our haunted house. We would provide, the reason it took us a little bit to get this to you was because I was looking at getting liability insurance, and I was able to secure liability insurance certificate that I would present to Finney County that would let you know that we are covered. We would request that Finney County maintain the insurance against fire, vandalism, malicious mentions, and other pearls, but we would have an event insurance policy. And we're requesting that the building would not sell until after November 1st of 2020, so that we would know that we have the building available for the fundraising event. And so I'm just requesting that from the county commissioners. I think it'd be a great event for our community, as well as help us raise the funds that we need to continue to operate and give children, the most vulnerable children in our community, a voice and help change their lives and their stories. Do you have any questions for me?
Gentlemen?
One comment I would have is, I hate to say that the sale of the building would be pending the haunted house. I'm afraid that my vote would be that if we get it sold, we get it sold. And if that happens before the haunted house, so be it. If not, I don't have any problem with them using it. I think we've been carrying that building on the books for a long time and spent a lot of money on it with no revenue.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with Larry. Are we in any kind of negotiation with anyone now?
No, I do have your county counselor looking at crafting the sale document for that. And so we're moving ahead, but not as thriftily as what we anticipated because of the circumstances.
Everything going on.
Yeah, I hate to put the sale in advance for 6 months, pending this event. Although I guess if we were 90 days out, I could feel a little different. Put it on hold. I know it's sat for years already, so maybe I might quibble about the time frame, but it's just my thought that tying the county's hands 6 months out is not appropriate right now.
Mr. Chairman, given those comments, this is Lon, for those of you on the line. I would suggest that we consider letting them use this in October. We have in the past had CASA here in front of us for funding. I think this is one of the ways that we can help CASA in a non-dollar way, if you will. And we can always sell the property and have closing be November 1st, and defer the closing until that time. So I don't think it prevents us from proceeding with trying to sell the property, and the closing date would be November 1st, as soon as their activity is over. And I would suggest that we honor this request. The problem we put CASA in, if we say there's a contingency, is then if we come up in September and we say we've got it sold, then where are they going to go? You know, how are they going to scramble and get that publicized and so forth and so on? So I think we need to either reject this or accept it without contingencies, and I would be willing to accept it.
Interesting discussion. Commissioner Jones?
Dave Jones here. Robert, I have a question for you. What amount of revenue do you anticipate you would raise out of this effort, this haunted house?
You know, we sat down with the committee and we put some very low numbers on it, but we figured we'll make at least $5,700 in our first year to build, and then continue to build on that. And then also we'll have time to look for a different building in the future. But right now we've been looking at buildings and we found this one and felt that it was the best one for location as well as just the location where it's at for accessibility to people. But for the first year, we felt we could make at least $5,700, which would be very useful to our agency.
Okay, I tend to, Mr. Chairman, echo Commissioner Fishley's thought on the delayed closing should we have a sale. However,
This is a county counselor. This is Kristen. I know that I was mentioned. I have a question since contingencies is a concern. I take it with CASA, there would be an automatic contingency for a haunted house in October, given the COVID regulations. If there are still regulations that the children are not back at school, that there are 6 feet apart, some of the regulations that we have now, maybe watered down in October, that those contingencies would stop the haunted house. Am I correct?
We have looked at that and thought about that if COVID-19 is still going on, then we may have to postpone or not have the haunted house and have to come up with a different fundraiser. But we were trying to hopefully move forward with the assumption that things would be better and that we have everything in place so that we could continue with that haunted house.
Okay, I just think it's that by October, COVID-19 will not be quote unquote gone away. I don't know what restrictions will be in place, but I would imagine even if they're watered down, there would be some restrictions. So I just wanted to bring that up, that you're probably working with contingencies that even has nothing to do with the sale of the land.
Right.
And again, those can't be anticipated exactly in October, but I would imagine that there will be some contingency in place that may prevent this altogether. And since that impacts the sale, I wanted to put that on the table.
Thank you for your input, appreciate that. Personally, I guess I am, a little leery about 6 months in advance, 3 months in advance, I'd be all for it. So, that's just my input. Gentlemen, I'll let, one of you be bold enough to put out a motion, one way or the other.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is Lon, and because we've not been able to sell the property for all this time anyhow, I would move that we permit CASA to use the 425 North 8th for the month of October and see where that goes.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dave. I'll offer a second, but I'd also like to offer an amendment.
Go for it.
My amendment to Lon's motion is that if we had a buyer that wanted to produce $5,000 as a benefit for CASA, in addition to the purchase, that we go ahead and sell ahead of time. That's my amendment.
Parliamentary procedure says the amendment would need a section second, and then we vote on the amendment before the motion. Is there no second? Dave, your amendment dies for lack of a second. We do have a second from Dave on Lon's motion. All those in favor of Lon's motion to grant CASA to use this facility 9 months from now for their haunted house.
Not 9. It would be,
Six, excuse me, 6 months from now. All those in favor, further discussion?
I was almost gonna offer to table this because I would consider this 90 days out, but I just want to consider it this far out, not knowing what actions we're taking to move this building.
Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion was defeated. Proceed from here, fellas.
Well, I'd like to see Mr. DeLeon bring this back to us, 90 days, provided we still have a building. I don't know that they're going to be, constructing huge things over the next 90 days. And I certainly would reconsider this.
Further discussion? Well, Robert, sorry, but do come back because the support is there for the use of your facility. But 6 months is a little long, 3 months would be better.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, and we're going to continue to come up with ways to continue to support the children of Finney County who are most vulnerable. So I appreciate your time.
But please don't misunderstand us. We are all in favor of supporting the children, and if all possible, this building hopefully will still be available to you. We have had a tender for.
Definitely understand your position, and thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Thank you for your time.
Have a good day.
Next on the agenda is a emergency loan fund application. Lana, are you online for us?
I am. Good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
All right, wonderful. So we do have the first application for the CDBG Emergency Loan Fund for the county, Rosie's Helping Hands. And as you can see on the paper I provided for you, they do meet the low to moderate income qualifications, which they have to have 51% low to moderate income in order to qualify for the fund. They have 2 full equivalency jobs that will be retained as a result of this. The CDBG guidelines require that for each 1 job, you can loan up to $35,000. We opted, in order to help as many businesses as possible, to stick with the $35,000 maximum loan. So that is what they've asked for.
The way they are set up, is if you've gone with the interest rate at 0.5%, first year interest only payment. The maximum term on these is 3 years, so, the funds should be returned to your CDBG loan fund at the end of the 3-year period. Right now, your fund balance is approximately $371,000. If this loan is approved, that takes you to about $336,000, and we're continuing to take applications, obviously, throughout this process. Do you have any questions for me?
Gentlemen, questions for Lana?
Mr. Chairman. Dave, Lana, is there a time limit on how long that money can stay in the bank before it's withdrawn? I'm talking about the 370,000.
So do you have to use it or lose it? Is that the question you're asking, Commissioner Jones?
Essentially, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so there has been talk of that over the years, that if the funds didn't get used in communities, that there's been threats of a pullback, if you will, to the state level. However, we're not hearing that that's a huge concern. The fact that we're able to get these out to businesses now is very helpful, because as you well know, we have struggled with getting businesses to meet, specifically county businesses, because most of the businesses out in the county are industrial, manufacturing, agricultural, and based, so they have a real hard time meeting that 51% low to moderate income qualifier. We did visit with Senator Moran on this last week, talking about making sure that we can utilize the county funds for businesses that are within the city, should that become a necessity. And we're working through that now with Debbie Beck at the state level to ensure that we would be able to do that. So if we were to run out of city funds, we were hopeful that we would be able to run loans against this fund. I've only had 3 applications from outside of the incorporated area of Garden City. I've had none from the city of Holcomb, but I have had 3. One of those has already been declined for not meeting the low to moderate income requirement, and the other one is processing now. So we don't know for sure if they're going to meet the LMI qualification or not.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Lon?
Lana, this is Lon, and I pride myself in knowing what most businesses are in Finney County, but I don't know what type of business Rosie's Helping Hands is, and that won't necessarily affect my vote on this, but just for information purposes.
Sure. Yeah, so they are a contract cleaning service. They do a lot of post-construction cleaning for businesses and for residential purposes, but they're available for both residential and commercial cleaning services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lana, this is Dwayne. Great Plains Development handles the paperwork on these loans, do they not?
They do. They handle all of the qualifications because they are the federal program administrator for us. We are on the city side, City of Garden City loan side. We have 7 more applications going before them tomorrow. And so we may be picking up some of the paperwork, the loan paperwork itself, getting that prepared for them. I believe the city staff is going to take over some of that, just simply because Great Plains has been, as you can imagine, very, very busy with applications. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We do still have to have them do all of the qualifications and check all of the employee certification forms to ensure that the business does indeed qualify.
Okay, further questions, gentlemen?
No, Dr. Clifford, just a comment. This fund has been collecting dust for some time, and I'm just glad to see it go to good purpose.
Thank you. If there is a motion, I need permission as the chairman to sign the documentation files.
So moved. Dr. Clifford.
And this is Lon, I would second.
Any further discussion on the loan app? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is good.
Mr. Chairman, while we got Delana on the phone, could you give us a little update? You know, I didn't get to listen to their meeting Wednesday, on what the local businesses are doing, if there's people hiring, or what's your sense of what's going on?
Jones. So, we are definitely in a different situation than a lot of counties across the state, largely because we are an essential production-based economy. So, we're not seeing, as much unemployment as a portion of our, community, certainly. While our restaurant industry and hospitality industry has been particularly hard hurt by this, we're still largely still employed. Tyson has taken on some additional employees in order to help with monitoring their teammates as they come and go from the plant to ensure that they're not carrying the virus. And I've worked with a couple of other businesses that had issues, had calls from their supply chain folks needing access to cleaning agents and those types of things that they've been struggling to get their hands on. So we're hearing a lot of positives from most of our businesses as we're dealing with them, that they're continuing to meet the needs and in some cases even expanding their services in order to meet the needs that are out there that some of the communities simply aren't able to meet at this point. So I'm hearing a lot of positives from most of the business community. I think everybody's just kind of in the same place of what does it look like? When do we come back and what does it look like and how do we change what we've always done, quote unquote, to ensure that we can meet the future needs of our community. So again, a lot of positive out there, certainly a lot of questions still about how this all ends, but we've seen really good reaction in our community and folks just seem to understand that yes, it's a challenge, but we're going to rise and meet it. So we'll continue to work with them as we go through that. We've again had lots of positive things happen as a result of that. Our businesses have looked for ways to be more online, have more online presence, to continue to sell products and continue to offer their services. So I think it's just going to take all of us again staying close and talking through everything. But I believe that our economy will be able to bounce back pretty quickly from this. Obviously, again, personal services are struggling. Our hair salons, our massage therapies, our spas, those types of things are really challenged by this. But I feel like these CDBG funds are very helpful in that if we could just get them through to the other side, I think those businesses will bounce back pretty rapidly if we could just hold them up until that time.
Thank you.
On Bill Clifford, just a comment, after the legislative coffee on Saturday, I spoke offline with some of our representatives. There's some thinking that when the governor's stay-at-home comes off, whenever that is, it might be put on the counties to reopen businesses. Obviously, we have a gate to meet, and we have guidance from the president on what types of things can occur first. But as economic development has taken on somewhat new meaning all of a sudden, I wonder if you could work with our county administrator and obviously the city to kind of line up who might come online in what order, if you understand what I'm saying. I don't know that will dictate it, but I do think our businesses may need some guidance so they don't get out ahead of the phasing in.
Yes, Commissioner Clifford, I completely agree. I think we're going to have to have a plan for that. I do agree that it's going to come back on counties, which probably makes the most sense, quite frankly, because our counties are so very diverse across the state of Kansas. So I think there will certainly be opportunities to look at that as a county, and I think you should be looking at that as a county. And yes, I would agree that it's going to take a concerted effort and a lot of discussion really related to the safety of all who choose to call Benton County home and all who come here and shop and so forth. But also certainly we have to be mindful of our employers and our businesses and get them operational to some level as soon as possible. I would agree.
Further observations, questions, guys? Alon, I, for one, would appreciate all you've done, your leadership, and it seems like your umbrella's gotten quite a bit bigger in the last few months, and I appreciate everything you're stepping up to the plate and your leadership. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Drees. We're pleased to share the burdens of this community, but we are truly blessed. We live in a great community, and our businesses are really doing what they can to work within the parameters that have been forced on them.
Okay, thank you. We're ready for a medical update. Gentlemen, should we recess and go into a Board of Health to cover this? Any comments, thoughts? I see a nod.
Yeah, that's appropriate. You can.
May I have a motion?
I would offer the motion, Mr. Chairman, this is Dave, that we recess our county commission meeting and reopen as the Finney County Board of Health.
Second.
Is moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is carried. Steve, you're going to see we call in both of the volunteers. Right.
Yeah, we brought up the second together here since we're, okay.
Keep your 6 feet apart now.
Yeah, you betcha. Want to mess that up, do we? Thank you for the opportunity. We're ready to brief you guys. We're still in a partial activation of our EOC, and really we're operating like it's full activation. We're just not staging in one single area. We turn all the various entities on with that EOC structure, and we're utilizing those from operations, planning, and logistics. We're just not staging in the EOC facility because of the dynamics of this particular event. We disseminate information daily to our vested parties. We do a situational report that's internal to Finney County to keep everybody aligned with what's going on with our EOC and what's our status with our emergency response organization as pertains to the CV-19. I know our last commission, there are some questions about some of the statewide capabilities, and we started disseminating that situational report as well that we get from KDEM. And I would hope that you guys are getting that information. If not, we can follow up and make sure you get that. And there's some pertinent information there, I think, with some of the questions that were raised last meeting, reference the number of beds available, ICU capabilities, things of that nature to handle a surge. From an organizational structure, we maintain that document. We're updating that every other day, plugging in the various personnel that are available to respond 24/7. We've identified some of those are limited. Some of those capabilities are limited in nature because of the distance spacing. So we've come up with a contingency that they can respond remotely if we do need to activate their particular services to support the EOC stature or response. We're in daily communications with KDEM. We have 2 conference calls a day, and so we're plugged into them. Okay, so that's happening. That's 7 days a week. Well, minus Sundays. They've kind of slacked off on Sundays somewhat, but we are communicating with them. Thus, we're communicating with our Southwest Regional Emergency Management representative as well. So we're kind of maintaining some uniformity with our adjacent counties. And obviously we know some of the struggles that Ford County is having right now, so we're sensitive to some of that as well. From a logistics perspective, PPE continues to be a struggle. We work that daily, and Anthony Cruz is doing a great job on that. He stays on top of that. He's got his finger on the pulse, and we are getting some results. We've had some deliveries from the state, which is, we've utilized those. We've disseminated those out as needed. We've had some local vendors volunteer and donated supplies to us, and we're very grateful for that. And I think when this is said and done, we can recognize those individuals, those companies, and I think that'd be the prudent thing to do. As you guys know today, and I won't step on Colleen's update, but we started our remote testing site. Some of you guys came out the other day to kind of see us kick that off a little bit, kind of introduce that to the community. We are getting support, and I'm going to just lightly touch on this because I'm sure Colleen will get a little bit deeper dive. We had the Air National Guard show up yesterday, so we kind of, brought them into the scenario and kind of we're kind of coordinating that response. Okay, And I just leave it at that, and probably can do a little bit deeper dive there. Just due to the percussion of this event as it comes across the nation, we identified we might have some shortages on some of our food stockpiles. So we've reached out to the United Way to identify what their contingency is, how long could they support if we had to activate some food banks, things of that nature. They've responded back with their various network of volunteer organizations and whatnot, and they've confirmed they've got a 30-day supply. If we had to go to that, position ourselves to start supporting the local communities from a food bank perspective. So we're gonna still continue to touch bases with them every couple of weeks, just in case, just because of the percussions coming across the country. We're seeing the lines of food banks in various communities. And we wanna make sure that, we're forward-leaning and prepared to deal with that if that does present itself. We've, kind of a sidebar, we've looked at our shelter contingency, and due to this CV-19 event, we're looking at condensing those shelters. We've identified 4 main structures, or 4 main facilities that we can utilize as shelters. That we're gonna introduce a temporary shelter contingency to our community, identifying those 4 shelters, because we can supply PPE to those shelters and not really create a shortfall of inventory as it comes to CV-19 support. Okay, and that's kind of what we're doing from this side of the EOC. One other thing we're doing is we're putting together a team to deal with some of the FEMA particulars as it pertains to trying to do some cost recovery. When this is all said and done, there's a lot of information we need to compile. And so per Robert's directive, we're going to put together a team and start working some of those logistics so we can kind of be ahead of the game when it comes time to submit some of that documentation and paperwork to the state and potentially to the federal government. Obviously we're expanding a lot of our resources, not just our physical resources, but our financial resources. And if we have an opportunity to capture some of that, we want to be ahead of the game and make sure that, we've got everything, the T's crossed and the I's dotted. And that's really where we stand. We're evolving daily, things are happening daily. So we're just trying to keep up with it. Actually, we're trying to keep a little bit ahead of it. And so far, so good. But it's, things can change rapidly when we want to be prepared to confront those changes as they present themselves.
Gentlemen, questions for Mr. Green? I'd like to
Please.
throw out one. Obviously, you have got Finney County, I feel, in a pretty good position. Are you getting reach out from surrounding counties asking for a little bit of assistance and guidance that they may not have the staff or connections that you might have? Have they been asking for a little help?
Initially, they reached out. We had developed some plans, contingencies, addendums to our emergency response plans, more aligned with the pandemic. And so we've shared those plans. We do have, we started a process of where we're doing bi-weekly meetings with our local jurisdictions, driven by our Southwest representatives. And we just initiated that about 2 weeks ago. So that's kind of evolving at this juncture. We're more of an information sharing right now. Obviously, those dynamics could change. And, but our focus has to be on Finney County. But if we can afford to reach out and do some mutual aid, of course we would. That's the prudent thing to do. But, we have to be real sensitive to that, especially with the PPE side of that equation.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleen?
Good morning, gentlemen. Hope you all good. So, as Steve was saying, yes, we kicked off our drive-through so far this morning, so it'll be a fun day out there, kind of working some of our plans and some contingencies with that. So troubleshooting a few things and very excited to do it. I can kind of briefly talk through the process of what we're doing out there and then our check-in process and how cars are basically moving through. So the first step, anyone who thinks or suspects that they may have coronavirus, they call our hotline. Our hotline is run by our nurses. Our nurses answer the phone, run through the symptoms, set up an appointment on our medical records. and then, give them the directions to the fairgrounds and kind of talk to them about the process. So, important, pieces to that information is the route through the fairgrounds, as well as having identification on each person in the car, as long as they do have an identification card. So our citizens are instructed to come on site with their windows rolled up. They put their ID card against the window, and then we have some signs to verify if they have an appointment or not. If they do not have an appointment, they are shown how to exit the property, given a COVID hotline card to then call the hotline and those instructions. When they have an appointment, they're then waved on to our registration table. At our registration table, that's when they verify the identity, check them into our medical record system, and then wave them onto the West Pavilion. Inside the West Pavilion, we have 2 stations set up so that we can bring in the first car to the furthest north station, and then we can bring in the second car to the south station, swab the passengers, verify identity, and then package the nasal swab for shipment out. We have a courier that picks up every day at 4:30, then takes it to the state to then process for results. So that's the basic process. This takes a lot of manpower and has been a tremendous amount of planning and supplies and things. We've had a lot of support from our departments and other community organizations, so that has been a tremendous support system for us. Really, that's kind of the gist of what's going on with the drive-through. Working with several organizations right now to continue doing this process, but we're excited to be able to even have the ability to do this.
Larry?
Question.
Yes, sir.
How many reservations did you have to start with?
So we kicked off this morning already with 20 already reserved, and then the afternoon is filling up.
Wow, that's great.
Quite, the phones are ringing for sure. So again, it was definitely a tremendous need in our community. So
There are any labs locally where you can get that tested with do it, or do you have to send it to Topeka?
So our best solution is to send to Topeka at this point. The turnaround right now is extremely fast. So that's really the best route for us.
Okay, thank you.
Just from a public health standpoint, there are certainly going to be people who can't prove their identity or citizenship. Since we don't want them in our community with disease and that they spread, where do they go? In the hospital or?
So I would still have them come through our drive-through situation. So it's if you have identification, please prove it, kind of a thing. So we are registering by their name on our medical record so that we can sort through and function basically people checking in, so that we don't have just general public coming through. We want to make sure that we are doing that screening process properly. We're also handing out education materials as we go through on isolation orders and that kind of thing, on what to expect. Again, we don't want to tell people to just show up at the hospital because we don't want them to go into the ER. They would need to call to screen with the hospital first. The hospital is, I think, testing, they have a different testing criteria that I'm not too familiar with.
I can just see it as a problem if folks don't want to contact with government, but yet they're symptomatic. We don't want them out there spreading the disease. So, I mean, we in the medical profession can't turn people away. A hospital cannot turn someone away. So that may be where they end up, unfortunately. And just Steve commented that the Air National Guard showed up with it. I mean, somebody flew in here, or a van of people came to help us out, or what does that mean?
So they have extended some support for us. We are still kind of trying to determine exactly where that piece will fit in with this entire process.
Are they medical people, or? They are. Thank you.
Commissioner?
She's running a good operation, it looks like.
Mr. Chairman, just a question, and this is Lon for those on the phone. My question is related to the statistics that you see on the website that are updated, I guess once a day or maybe more often, I'm not sure, but the question that I have, I understand confirmed and negative total cases and so forth, but on the one stat, on recovered, it stays static at 8. And is that always going to be static at 8, or when we find out someone else is recovered, that might go to 9, or how did, just help me understand how that works as far as the statistical reporting?
So all of the numbers that we report on there are all running counts. We just need to update them. So of course, as the volumes come in, we will update those numbers as they come through. So it's pretty fluid, so it's usually updated multiple times a day. Again, keep in mind too that potentially this virus can have a longer recovery time in some individuals, and so you may see that number stagger for a little bit longer periods.
And I very much do understand that and appreciate that fact, but I'm just curious if that number would ever move. So,
Absolutely.
and then, Mr. Chairman, follow-up question, and I may come back to this in our commissioner reports, but on our KAC call, the board call the other day, Nick Baldetti, who's the health person in Reno County, is on our board, but he was extremely interested and helpful to our board meeting the other day with regard to this virus. And one of the things that he referenced was that his somehow, and I don't even understand what he was saying exactly, but his numbers are being updated in real time. However, the state's numbers, the KDHE dashboard that we have a link to, is only updated once a day. So his numbers are even more current than what KDHE is. But can you speak to that as far as our county and how we relate to KDHE and so forth? Because it was really interesting to hear his take on that.
I mean, that is exactly right. Our numbers are reported quicker than what KDHE takes to then update their system. And then there's another reporting system that then goes over to KDHE to then update those numbers. So yes, the numbers that we publish, you'll see a difference between our local and then what the state reports because of the time lag. So you will, yes, you see that.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions or comments?
Thanks, Colin. Thanks for all your hard work.
Absolutely, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a motion to reconvene as the board of commissioners.
And I would second that motion.
We have a motion to adjourn from the health board and reconvene as county commissioner. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. We are back as commissioners. Slight pause, because we have health department and administrator visiting, and he is next on the agenda, so we'll just just a second, let them finish their business.
I might comment that they were very organized out there on Friday. Really was impressive to set out the traffic control in the way the city was participating, the college, and USD 457.
It is terrific how all the agencies and coming together, working as a team. It's great.
I'd like to take a minute to ask the people on the telephone to please mute your line unless you're addressing the commission. We are allowed back on this. Thank you.
To thoroughly chastise in this audience, so,
All right.
Robert?
Are we ready to discuss the 457?
Yes,
Yes.
correct. They were in.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir.
Before you have for your consideration MOU between Finney County and USD 457. What this is designed to do is to allow us to utilize some of their school nurses for volunteer purposes during the testing process. Right now, I believe we have 3 of them today working, and they are still employees of the school district, but in essence, it's allowing them to work as they're underneath their coverage, but under our protocol for this event. So you see that document before you today. I anticipate that we'll try and work out the same process with the college as well, as I did have a conversation with Ryan on Friday. Do you have any questions or concerns about the document or me?
It sounds like a good idea. Encourage you to use Dr. Duda too.
Yes.
No, I'm glad to see this, read through it, and I think it'll work well.
And I'm sure the health department staff is welcoming some help, so.
They will need all hands on deck on this one.
So absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, this is Lon. I would move that we authorize the county administrator to sign the memorandum of understanding with USD 457 with regard to school nurse volunteers.
Dr. Cleveland, seconds.
Further discussion? I think it's a great idea. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Appreciate you looking into that, taking the lead on that, sir.
And they will be acting on it, considering it this evening.
Mr. Chairman, Dave speaking, this does essentially what a declaration of local disaster emergency would do in coverage, just for information. But you've done it in a kind of neat way here, and it's narrower in scope, so good job.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question before Colleen leaves. What do you anticipate your hours to be on this?
So we have advertised the hours as 9 to 4:30 for the drive-through. The hotline runs 8 to 5, Monday through Saturday. That's by health department staff, but then it's run by St. Catherine's staff after hours and on weekends. There could be some fluctuation in those hours as we meet the demand of how the community needs.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman,
Just on one,
Oh, go ahead.
for the public's perception, if you were not able to hear Colleen, the drive-through is open 9 to 4:30, and hotline remains 8 to 5 o'clock at this point in time. That's just in case you were not able to hear. Comment?
It's actually 24/7, just, the hotline is manned 24/7 by health department staff some of the time and hospital staff the rest of the time. So it is a 24/7 line.
I've been really correct. Thank you all for that. Okay, now,
What I said is that.
well, and that's good that you clarified that since we're on the speakers. Mine is to Robert and maybe Colleen, just, and you don't need to come in. But is the time of the drive-through testing going to be dictated by the amount of test kits and so forth? So, for example, you said we had 50 a day, and I think you said initially we had 3 days supply, and maybe some more after the weekend. Once that runs out, then we're done testing, or how does that work with regard to how long this testing site is open?
I'll go ahead and let Colleen go ahead and cover that, because my assumption is that they are getting resources in, hopefully daily to replenish this.
Sorry, I didn't ask that when you were up here.
No, it's okay.
It didn't occur to me.
That's a hard question to fully discuss. When we went into this, KDHE guaranteed us 50 tests a day for essentially 4 to 6 weeks. That could change at any moment, and so I think that will adjust perhaps as time goes. So.
Well, and I hadn't heard the 4 to 6 weeks piece of that. I had heard the 50 a day, so that even helps me clarify a little bit better.
Yeah, again, of course, I can choose at a drop of the hat, so,
Okay.
it's unclear, but we have supplies, and so we'll do this as long as we possibly can, and as long as our community needs it.
Sure. Okay,
So,
thank you.
thank you.
But, I mean, conceivably, we would have thousands of tests. I would hope that we don't have thousands of symptomatic people in the county, so will testing criteria expand? Do you anticipate that?
I don't know if it would for sure expand. KDHE has modified it as time has gone by. So we still continue to follow whatever directive that they give us in that criteria. So Again, I think that also just depends on the demand too, so we'll have to kind of play by ear and gather information and see.
Thank you.
All right, thanks again, colleagues, very much appreciate it.
You're welcome, thank you.
As we all know, this is a topic of interest amongst the whole community, and everybody's talking about it, so we appreciate the discussion, information that's given. Moving on to the agenda. Mr. Elliman, I hope you're online because you're next. If you would like to visit us about your items on the agenda.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I think the first one I have on the list is the ceiling project.
Yes.
We opened bids, on the 7th of April, had two bidders, APAC and B&H Paving. B&H Paving was a low bid, $551,473.76. And we recommend approving the bids so we can get agreements going and have them start sealing in June.
Does this fall in line with your estimates, John?
Yes, I believe so.
Further questions for John?
John, Dr. Clifford, I've had an increasing opportunity to walk and bike ride around the Southwind area here of late. Those roads are deteriorating, and I'm wondering, is that development on the agenda for next year for sealing? Or will it be some other type of, thing to get us by till the next season? I'm worried about the water getting in all those large cracks and then our roads really going, deteriorating quickly.
It's not on for next year. Actually, they were done, I think you guys were done 2 years ago. 2 or 3 years ago, we sealed in Southwind. We probably want to look at doing something different in there, to address each crack a little bit. We do definitely need to get in and do something with the cracks. I think there's a couple different options that we can use for that. We'll look into that and maybe add that to next year's crack sealing project. I noticed those cracks are getting bigger too. We done something in there a few years ago that used a slurry type of crack fill that helped. But we just haven't been back to do that again.
Okay, thanks. It's a noticeable bump about every 50 feet now driving through there biking. So I appreciate the attention. Thank you.
That's our speed control too.
That's what you're fast.
It's not working.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, John, this is Lon. We've got the same issue out at Towns Riverview. I haven't compared it to Southwind, but we've got the crack issue. And that's what I've told some of our residents, that hopefully it's a part of our speed control. However, it's not slowing people down much.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. Gale Road past my farmstead's in perfect shape.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dave. John, is B&H Paving a company you've used before?
They're the only ones that have been doing our sealing since we started contracting that out.
Correct. So with that recommendation and your alternative recommendation, I'll offer the motion to approve B&H's bid at $551,473.76.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. And Commissioner Jones, thank you for getting us back on track and refocused. 8th Street project, John.
Okay, this one, there's been some questions on when and what the city's gonna do there. Part of their project is from Jones Avenue to just north of the church there, is what they think they had enough money to do. Speaking of Sam, work that project is they didn't think they'd be able to add on any more to the state contract, just because of timing delay. However, they did say that they're gonna add the rest of the street to St. John, which it would include front of the church as an alternate bid. And if it falls in within the numbers, then they may go and do that in front of the church. Otherwise, they think they may go back and use, if the city commission would let the money go, they would go back, maybe try to use bid prices to finish that up with city funds. I don't think there's been any talk about doing or sharing any funds to go in front of the courthouse, or there's been talk, but I don't think they're willing to do that.
Well, John, from my perspective, I'm gonna interrupt, I don't believe we were ever led to think that they would help us with that project. I think, my understanding anyway, correct me if I'm wrong, that if we did that in front of the courthouse, that was all on Finney County.
If we want to do it now, I think that's true. That's going to be all on Finney County if we want to try to do that about the same time as the rest of the 8th Street being tore up. The only option we have to do that then would be is to contact the contractor who wins the bid and see if they will do it at hopefully the prices they bid. Or whatever different prices we can make an agreement on.
But John, this is Lon, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding of what you just said in previous discussions, that the angle parking at the church is not part of the overall 8th Street project, it's an alternate. Am I understanding that correct?
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Chairman, I suggest even if we do pay for it, we don't want to do that angle parking in front of the courthouse unless they do the angle parking in front of or by the church. I think we'd really foul up the traffic flow if we tried to do ours and they didn't do the church part.
Commissioner Jones?
Mr. Chairman, this day, I'm the one I think probably responsible for the questions before us today, and I appreciate the thoughts that went in by John and by our county administrator and agree with their recommendations. But I also want to say that I've had a little side conversation with some folks from the city of Garden City, and when this project is finished, it's because they have run out of money. But if you look at 8th Street from the end of their project on south to Fulton Street, that's in the, if you will, in the parameters of a future project. So I'm most willing as a county commissioner to say, okay, let's hold on and see about their future project. And then if that future project can back up and put the angle parking in front of the church, then at that point we could consider angle parking in front of the courthouse. So I'm willing to let it sit quietly.
This is Larry. I'd have to agree with Commissioner Jones that, to spend $100-some-thousand for parking spots doesn't seem very appropriate this time with our financial conditions. We don't know where things are going to shake out on this thing, so I wouldn't be in favor of spending it at all.
Further comments?
No, I am kind of in favor of this in the long run. I agree with Dave's thoughts. I don't think we've been, outside the box enough. I mean, you might even ask Curtis for some money to get this increased parking.
Further comments?
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is Dave speaking. I think I can speak as I seem to get the consensus of the board and just put this on the back burner or shelve it, table it, whatever term we want to use until sometime in the future.
Well, and this is Lon, my comments are similar to that. If the alternate is bid for the city project, I think we need to at least discuss it again, even though it may be a part of the second phase of 8th Street. But I think only if that alternate is bid for the church parking should we discuss it again.
I think, we have a consensus, John, don't throw the paperwork away, but we're kind of on hold.
Okay.
Put it in the bottom drawer, John.
And I think,
Just need to remember where I put it.
Larry might have raised a pretty good point. I see we have Mary from the appraiser's office is in. I heard this morning that from my local oil friend that cash price for his oil today is $8. So I do not think we better count on a whole lot of severance to our budget this year. Moving on, Farmland Road update, John.
I just wanted to kind of let you know where we're at. We are still trying to get right away. The city's talked to TPNL, they seem to be somewhat interested in maybe donating the right of way they have. However, they're looking at, they wanted a appraisal of the whole property. So that might be coming to see how that all shakes out. We'll see. We're a little disappointed. We're still waiting on the attorneys to send letters out to the landowners for right away yet. Hopefully they'll go out this week, but I'm not sure I'm gonna hold my breath, but I will bug them again to find out, to push that along some more. Basically it was, hopefully we can put this off and again until maybe August to be about the earliest I see us being able to do anything. We can't advertise and let the project until right away is purchased. So that's where we're at, holding up on Farmland Road project.
Okay, Lana, are you by chance still online? Do you have any input on that project? I did not hear from Lana, so I would assume she's left the meeting. Further discussion? Larry?
Question for John, what attorneys, city, county, which ones?
It's cities, through Grizel's office, yes.
I would, Mr. Chairman, this is Lon. I would add a couple of things, and Robert and I have had some email discussions and so forth with KDOT. And KDOT, the personnel, the people we've talked to in that office they're continuing to look for some additional funds. They haven't found any yet, but they're on the lookout for it. We also, with regard to this, and I'm talking about the $550,000 shortfall, not, and I hear what John's saying about right of way and so forth being the triggering point. But it seems like you were going to visit, Robert, with the city with regard to the, what do we call it, qualified inspector or something, to see whether that would reduce that 550 shortfall to 350.
That's correct. I believe John is working that angle on the KDOT certified tester.
Certified tester, that's it.
I did talk with Sam about that. I have not, however, talked to Carol, who the inspector works under. So, I will make a phone call to her, or Sam to, we'll find out about that, but that's still an option that we can be used if she'll allow him to do that.
Because for the rest of the commissioners, if you recall, we had some information earlier, that's about 180,000 of the 550,000. And so if we could get that covered here, then that makes our shortfall a little bit more feasible. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, I keep track of what's happening in Hays and Ellis County quite a bit because we frequent that county as much as any. They have a 4 roundabout project on North Vine Street that was bid just the other day, just a week ago. The KDOT, engineer's estimate was 8.1 million. The local engineer's estimate was 8.4 million. The bid came in at 11.9 million, 3.5 over. And the reason that they gave for their overage is mainly, and I'm quoting, mainly attributed to the current economic situation caused by COVID-19 pandemic. Supplies, labor, so forth and so on. So, John, do you have any input or insight? If we were, say the right of way was all done, if we were to bid this out tomorrow, I'm concerned that shortfall is gonna be more than 550,000.
I don't have any, I mean, it's possible, but I don't have any, I don't look at the bids often enough to know how the COVID-19 stuff is affecting that.
And I would just simply add, the two bidders on that Hayes project, the one at 11.9 was Smoky Hill out of Salina. Cost Construction out of Topeka, who did our bypass project, was at 12.7. They were almost $1 million higher than the low bid. So, based on what I'm seeing, and yes, that's a different project in that it involves roundabouts and different engineering and so forth, but where they're 3.5 million above the engineer's estimates, concerns me.
Well, we may find out, I'm sorry, I'll assume that, I think the city put out bids today for Jenny Barker, so we'll find out here in May what kind of prices we get there.
Good point. Yeah, good point. I was alarmed when I saw that last week on Hayes Post.
Yeah, I would be too.
Although they said they do have funds and they're moving along with the project, so.
Commissioner Drees, this is Lana. Sorry, I was watching, but I wasn't, I had gotten off of the conference call. Yeah, the only large concern we have obviously is that we don't want to risk the KDOT funds. So whatever we need to do to keep the KDOT funds that we currently have dedicated to it active, we need to make sure that we're on top of that. Beyond that, it's going to be more and more important as we see empirical start construction that we're able to push as much traffic as possible over the farmland roads. So we just need to make sure that we keep the project top of mind so that we're able to get it completed.
Agreed, good point, thank you, Lonnie. Further questions, comments about Farmland Road project? All right, John, Lana, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
We are ready. Any board governance comments at this point? Let's move on to county administrator report.
All right. Very briefly this morning, if you're not aware, a lot of my time has been taken up of the CV19 event. But I did want to brief you on a couple of things that we're doing. They are in regard to that as well. And Steve already mentioned the FEMA cost recovery process that we're beginning to go through. Did want to brief you that for some of the employees that we have that are off, we've reassigned them, and we reassigned them as support personnel for this event. Initially, we had them working in the backgrounds with emergency management, but one of the other things that we'll be looking at is possibly training some of those individuals to do take some of the phone calls for the health department, that way freeing up maybe some of their nursing staff that they don't need to be answering the calls. We can train them on the protocol, the process, and so forth on being able to take the calls. So we're hopefully trying to do a couple things there. We're bringing them back to work, number one, and then number two is trying to provide some relief for the frontline testing with the health department and so forth. So, stay tuned on that because it's a really dynamic situation, pending how long this thing goes on. And I've warned the staff for quite some time as this began, is that, this is more akin to a marathon as opposed to a sprint. It will go on for a while, and so we're going to have to, make sure that we take care of the personnel that are doing that.
Before you leave that, Steve Green mentioned a little bit about, is the budget gonna be an issue for emergency management, or is he gonna run out of money and we're gonna have to tweak his
Yeah,
budget funding?
yes, we're actually tracking that probably, no, I don't know, if not daily, definitely on a weekly basis, since we set up a cost program within our accounting system to track that. So we are making resources available for them, and as we continue on, we'll have to end up doing some budget adjustments, not budget amendments, budget adjustments, in essence transferring authority from one area to his area to pay for that. So yeah, this is a departmental budget buster for him. It just is. So there's no way you could have foreseen that or planned for that. So it's whatever contingencies that we can pull together for it, we'll do it. We just have to make that happen.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt the report.
No, and that's really the crux of it. And if you have questions for me, please don't hesitate. Pass it on.
I don't know, more of a statement than a question. I would like to see the county kind of take the lead in going back to normalcy. Be one of the first ones to open up. I don't know what departments you would think about, but I think we wait around for Topeka to do something. We're gonna be waiting. You look around the country, and especially in the Midwest, I think the county needs, maybe you take a look and see what departments you think could start partially opening back up to the public. Until we get some kind of normal flow of folks, this thing's gonna drag on forever.
I think that's a very good point. Actually, this weekend thought about strategies for following up with ramping back up for operations here. One of the things, we too will be closed through May 3rd, constantly assessing this. But we also anticipate, as you monitor our numbers, we also anticipate that we'll continue to see an increase in those numbers here before they start increasing at a decreasing rate. And that's what.
Well, that's because you're testing more.
Well, that's one aspect of it. We'll find out more from it. So yes, we are looking at ramping up strategies, getting people back to work here within the operations. The reassignment of staffing is kind of one attempt to try and keep them involved in the county operations without, and it's still limiting their exposure. So we're cautiously trying to keep that going and moving in that direction.
But you heard on the legislative call that, home rule doesn't apply. I mean, as long as it's governor's EOs in effect, we're following Topeka, unfortunately. But I understand internally, you probably have some flexibility in the county that some of us employers deemed non-essential don't have right now.
Right. So we're improvising and trying to utilize our resources as best we can.
Along that line, though, I was wondering, I was talking to the sheriff, and evidently his census is like 60 now. Half of what we normally see. I don't know if you all are aware of that. But what about our JDC? Have you had any reports for Katrina?
Last I heard, we're at 5.
And our foster care side never opened then before this all occurred?
Not yet. We have some fire alarm, updates that we have to do to that. And that's where we're at on that.
Thank you.
So, any further questions? Thank you, that's all for
Thank
you.
you, Brian. Yes, yeah.
Appreciate that, although the plate has been really cool. Commissioner reports, and we'll wrap it up, start with Larry.
Getting more acquainted with Zoom. It seems like I would listen to the legislative, meeting Saturday with everybody. Then also listen to or monitor the, what's the exact name for that, High Plains Republican Women's?
We have a Republican Women of the High Plains.
Yeah, something. And listen to their meeting, and they had a presentation from, Lindstrom and Kovach. And so it was interesting to listen to their take on things. Other than that, I had a conference call the other day with livestock producers. One of them was a smaller dairy, and his problem was one of his employees came up positive on a test. Well, the county health department called all the rest of the employees that work for it and said, don't come to work. Well, that doesn't work for a dairy. It doesn't work for a feed yard. That doesn't work for anything. And so they had to work through communications with the employers. Hopefully that our county health doesn't do something like that. You just can't shut down a business without communicating with the employer if you have a positive case. I know there's HIPAA requirements, but that's mainly for the medical community. Once the employee gives them credit, or gives them I understand, gives them the authority to contact their employers, then they can't do that. But I think we need to stress that if anybody comes up positive, that they need to be in touch with their employers and not to make any rash decisions without consulting the employers. Because you just can't close down an ongoing business like that.
Very good point. Appreciate that.
Are you ready for about the fairgrounds event on Friday? I took the opportunity to speak briefly to the press and the crowd there on your pickup. Dave was kind enough to be the official photographer. I was on a teleconference with Congressman Marshall. Most people on there were concerned about their individual $1,200 check, so it rapidly deteriorated. We at Southwind have had a highway cleanup. We decided we could do that to keep social distancing and still get out there, and happy to report 80 bags of trash were located along the highway for KDOT pickup. We still have more to do, but it's been a nice community project out there. And I did get on the governor's update briefly on Friday, which I find kind of interesting. That's all I have.
Dave?
The only meeting I had was, as Larry said, a Zoom meeting with Finney County Committee on Aging. And apparently, they're continuing with the struggle on their budget. These outside, is what we would call outside departments, have to have a budget request to you this week. Is that correct?
Yes, we're beginning this week, starting to meet with some of the outside agencies and reviewing that and helping them along with their process.
Their ongoing concern, it's not yet answered, is do they ask for funding through their budget for a parking lot repair and replacement, or should that be outside? I'm sorry. I asked Robert to if he could address that at this meeting today, so.
Sure. We need a podium instead of this.
Yeah, we've asked for that for about 5 years.
Trash can.
Budget.
Okay. We got the trash can, we didn't get the vote. First things first.
In our budgeting process, I request all of those types of asks, if you will, and then make the determination once I get a full view of what they're asking for, make a determination at that point in time after visiting with them, where does that best fit? Does this best fit in building the grounds, budget, your maintenance budget, or where, or is it just from that entity? It's our facility still. So it would make sense that in essence, we would take care of that and schedule that in. I know I did, follow up with Roger, here, last week, to kind of get an idea of what his last conversation, with us on that was, and I believe, he'll do some follow-up and probably get back with me later on this week on that. Roger?
I'm on the line.
Okay, we were talking about you.
I know, you always do when I'm not there.
You said that,
I measured that, lot over there, and I got with John, and we crunched some numbers in, for a contractor to come in and mill that out and relay it back in, you're looking at about 75. For our workforces to do it, you'd be around half of that. But I will say right now, having our workforces do it would put even more burden on a short crew.
Okay. Do you have the resources though to do it in-house?
Yeah, I think we could, but like I said, it would put quite a stretch on us.
Okay.
Their concern for fellow commissioners is that somebody's gonna take a spill, fall out there as they amble across the parking lot, and so, it does have some dangerous spots in it.
Roger, is there anything we can do to as a stopgap, try and mitigate some of those hazards out there perhaps?
Yeah, what I was thinking of, just to cheapen it up a little bit, would be to, go in there and, hot patch the holes that are there and then seal the parking lot, like we are currently gonna seal the roads. It would have the same effect, it's, pavement, preservation, is a way to look at it. But if you filled in the low spots, the little potholes and whatnot, and then put a seal coat on top of it, it wouldn't raise the elevation, that much throughout the whole parking lot.
Okay, could that be done in a relatively timely fashion perhaps?
Yeah, we'd have to get with our contractor, but, we would probably want to use the same contractor that's doing the roads, and he could fit it in, relatively easy, I would imagine.
Okay. Concerns, thoughts?
It goes back to your budget item, where does that fall?
Yeah, and I just seek a little direction from fellow commissioners. What should I tell the Benton County Committee on Aging to expect? So apparently we need to wait just a little bit more and check the availability of this B&H contract.
Correct. Sounds like that might be an opportunity to at least buy us a little bit of time, and if that would be the pleasure of the commission.
It makes more sense.
I agree.
Figuring it all out.
I appreciate that. Then the other meetings or events I've had, attended the press release at the fairgrounds for the COVID testing, and the Zoom meeting with the legislators Saturday. And then I'll report that the local emergency planning committee and the library board meetings for this month have been canceled or postponed until sometime in the future. So that's it.
Roger, don't go away before I need you on my report, Roger. Bond?
Yeah, this is Lon, and the meetings of substance, the CBB met via Zoom, and I sat in on that, and a couple of things from CBB. They did approve the budget that they're going to present to the county commission. They are very concerned from a CBB standpoint with regard to the retail sales tax. I'm concerned about that when it comes to Jenny Barker Road and fire station funding and so forth with regard to our sales tax issue that we had approved, but CBB is also concerned. They are concerned about the bed tax, that's not the official word. Transient guest tax, I guess is what the official term is, because the hotels are basically empty. And the hoteliers on the board are very concerned about viability going forward. They did mention, and right at that day, the Beef Empire Day's entire 10-day celebration was canceled. But they're working with Beef Empire Days to see if maybe later on they can bring back some of the events just piecemeal to still recognize the beef, the importance of beef in Fannin County. Pro-Am, they don't know yet whether it will happen. Art in the Park, they've communicated, they're not sure how it will happen. Symmetra Tour, they're communicating with them and not sure how that will happen. They did lose a golf tournament through the the National Junior College Association, and they had it booked for this past spring, and when the NCAA shut everything down, that cost us a golf tournament. So there's a lot of things that are affecting negatively the CBB. However, their attitude is still positive. And they're not sure about the Finney County Fair, what it will look like, even though that's a few months away. They're not quite sure yet how that will take effect. So the big impact on CBB activities, but they are being prudent about what they're doing. I did have a KAC board Zoom meeting Friday, and we had two guest speakers on that call. One was and I forgot, I thought I had my folder for the KAC board meeting, and evidently it's sitting on my desk. It's kind of like operator error on the door this morning, Larry. It's Monday. But anyhow, I can't think of the doctor's name, but he's with KU Medical, and he's part of the modeling that the state is doing. He's involved in that, and really had some interesting slides on his presentation on how they come about determining some of the modeling. So that was very interesting to us as the KAC board. The other one was the executive director of NACO, and the executive director, this ties to some comments that were made earlier, Mr. Chairman, about local control. And the NACO is trying to help the congressmen and the senators understand that counties are the important players. The problem is there's 3,000 in some cities, and there's 300 in some counties, no, that's not right, but that disregard those numbers, but there's 10 times as many cities as there are counties. And the cities, when you're talking about some of this funding, some of the funding is being directed to the cities. NACO is also not supporting that if it doesn't go to the cities, that it go directly to the state, because NACO is concerned that it won't be distributed to the counties appropriately. So NACO is our advocate in Washington, trying to get funding directly to the counties rather than to the cities or to the states, even though they recognize how important each of those entities is. And he said over and over, we're not saying anything disparagingly about cities and states, but counties have the county health departments and are the frontline players. And so NACO is really working on our behalf in Washington. And lastly, with regard to that board meeting, KAC, and I forwarded a piece to Robert, they're asking each of the counties to identify who is tracking the expenses, because KAC wants to put together a tracking mechanism to make sure that counties are appropriately reimbursed when they can be reimbursed for these expenses related to the pandemic. So KAC is really working on our behalf. I think we're getting our money's worth for both of those memberships just during this pandemic time. And I would agree with what Larry said a minute ago. This is a quick side note. You guys would be disappointed if I didn't use the word convener. I think the county needs to be the convener on the reopening process. No doubt in my mind that needs to happen. Lastly, with the KAC board meeting, I forgot to mention, just to highlight, Nick Baldetti, the Reno County Health official, we had a 9 o'clock board meeting and he'd already had 3 Zoom meetings before we got on our 9 o'clock one on Friday. One was with the press, one was with departments, and I don't remember the third one. But I am so impressed with what Nick Baldetti is doing over in Reno County from a health department standpoint. And they have some cases, they're not out of line compared to Wyandotte or Johnson or Sedgwick County, obviously. But Nick Baldetti is doing a great job over there. If you track any Hutch Post or anything like that, you might pay attention to some of the things he's saying. And then I did sit in and Ben sat in with me on the legislative coffee, and I too heard what Bill just mentioned about the home rule, that the state, overrides. But here's my concern about the reopening. If we don't take a proactive approach, we're gonna have some business people and some others going rogue, in my words, because already a couple of them are starting to talk about reopening, and if we don't, really be proactive, we could have some escalated numbers in Finney County, if it's not done appropriately. So people are getting impatient about getting out of their houses, they're getting impatient about getting their businesses open, especially from a retail and hotelier and restaurant aspect. So, and even some of them that were mentioned earlier about hairdressers and so forth. But they're going to get impatient, and that impatience is going to be magnified over the next 2 weeks. That's the end of my long verbal report, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your indulgence.
You will have a 10-minute limit next meeting. I will time you.
Well, I had a lot of things to remember.
Well said. Let's start with Fair Board. Roxanne, as you know, from CBD has lended her expertise, and she's doing her budget for them. And I think the board is very welcoming her assistance. She's taking the lead on the fair. The question was put to me at the Zoom meeting. At that date, they were 98 days out. I visited with Robert about this. They were questioning whether they could even have an affair and all that good point. My advice was continue on as if you are. You're 90 days away. You can always cancel it at day 45 or whatever. But they also questioned whether they had the authority to continue on with the fair or whether the county commission can overrule them. And I said, well, I suspect we could overrule you if we feel the fair has to be canceled and you refuse to do so. So that may fall back on us, and we'll rely, I'm sure, on Robert and the governor's advice on that matter. But again, Roxanne is taking a very good lead in this fair at the board, and they really appreciate her help.
Just a quick question, is kind of from our KAC, is the Fair Board communicating with the Department of Health in trying to arrive at that decision?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, because
That was not discussed.
I would encourage them to do that.
Extension, I did not make that meeting, but we do have something on our plate. Roger, that's why I asked you to stay on. I hope you still are. We need to resolve how much property they are going to be responsible for mowing. And I would like a recommendation from you fairly soon before we draw up that agreement on what we talked about donating the building, but we want to keep ownership of the land indefinitely. But they will want to know how much mowing they get to do. So I would like a recommendation from your department, Roger, on what the boundaries of that agreement are going to be.
Roger left.
Oh, that rascal. Well, pass it on, John. Either that or you take the lead on it. So.
I'll let Roger handle that unless you need me to. I don't know what all we've talked about so far, so.
Well, briefly, John, where the extension building is setting, there's a kind of a mowing area, probably from the arena fence line to the north and the street and parking lot. They're gonna wanna know what they're responsible for maintenance as far as mowing, gardening, all that good rot. Let alone just the building, so that has to be decided when we get that agreement written up, and they're gonna, if they haven't already, they're gonna need it fairly soon, because they need to work their budget, so they know what to budget for as well. And that's
Okay.
my report. Anything else from the commission, fellas? We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Next meeting in this same format.
Yes, unless you hear different.